NFL Week 7 is upon us. I'm Nick Whalen. He's John McKechnie. We are back for another week of our best bets in the National Football League. John, a very interesting Week 7 ahead of us. A ton of closely lined games on the Week 7 slate. I was looking at the official lines for the Circa contest that came out on Thursday afternoon. 8 of 15 games currently sitting at 3 or shorter. We got 5 games sitting at exactly 1.5 in the Circa contest. You'll, of course, see a little bit of variance when you're checking around at the various sports books. But as always, we will give you our 3 best bets of the week. We got some sides, we got some totals for you. Do a little evaluation of what we saw in Survivor contests in week 6. Not a whole lot of carnage relative to the last couple of weeks. Give you our Survivor picks for the week ahead. Give you some props. We'll give you a parlay. We'll give you a teaser. And we'll finish out the show with our best bets of the week. Jonathan, as always, lead us off. Your number one play of the week is?
My number one play of the week, give me the Minnesota Vikings, the well-rested Minnesota Vikings. Checking in as 2.5-point underdogs at home against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are kind of coming off the mini bye, as it were. And I'm not trying to extrapolate too much from their drubbing on national TV last Thursday against the Giants. I think the Giants were really fired up for that one, but I think that it was a little bit of a continuation for me of this Eagles team where they are right now. I didn't like the Eagles against that number last week, covering 7.5. Obviously they lose that one outright by 17. Not expecting anything like that when it comes to the Vikings, but ultimately I think that there's just something, this Eagles team feels a little bit like the 2023 Eagles team when they didn't have a good offensive coordinator and they were just kind of overcorrecting every single week. And I know that the defense should be a little bit stronger on Sunday. They get Jalen Carter back. That was a big issue for them last week, of course, against Cam Scatterbo and company. So he'll be back. That should help the run defense, everything like that. And it is going to be Carson Wentz or JJ McCarthy back there, probably expecting Wentz to be the guy. But ultimately, I just think that this Eagles team offensively is in deep trouble right now, to the point where I'm not trusting them on the road against a good team, let alone a really good defense that has had extra time to prepare for this matchup. So for me, I like the Vikings to, potentially win that one outright. And certainly I like them to cover that 2.5.
Does it matter to you who the quarterback is for Minnesota?
Pretty quarterback agnostic. It's just two different flavors of bad. For the most part, Wentz is worse to watch, but McCarthy certainly hasn't. It's a short sample when it comes to McCarthy. Everyone was saying going into week 3 after he got hurt that he played 7 bad quarters out of 8. That is correct. He had the good fourth against the Bears. That was about it. But Wentz, I think, can at least keep it on the rails a little bit more. They have Jordan Addison back, everything like that, and. Ultimately, it comes down to the defense. I think that the Vikings will be able to just get enough done offensively to keep this one respectable that way, put enough points on the board. And I just think that the Eagles can just kind of take themselves out of a game. They're kind of like their own worst enemy as far as their offense goes right now.
Yeah, when I came into the week, John, I hated the board. As we've gotten further into the week, I now love a bunch of spots, and I'm glad that we have some overlap, with some of our plays. So I was thinking about going with the under 44 in this game as one of my plays, but we'll make that somewhat of a bonus pick since you are on the Vikings already. But I think we get a low scoring game, and I think that plays into your thought that Minnesota could win this outright. Like if this is a game that's played in the mid to high 20s, I don't know if that bodes well for Carson Wentz. That means the Eagles offense is probably rolling, but I don't trust either of these offenses right now. Minnesota 26th in offensive EPA, Philly 21st. There was one of those notebook dump articles that came out on ESPN earlier this week, and it's inside the Philadelphia Eagles. It wasn't positive. They made that comparison that you just made to 2 seasons ago when the wheels just totally came off that team. I think it's an inflection point game for Philly. I think we'll have a good sense of where this season is headed after this week. If they come out, they smash Minnesota, AJ Brown's not crying after the game, everything looks better, Saquon's running wild, okay, then the Eagles are probably back. If they lose this game, man, it's an excusable loss. It's a closely lined game. Minnesota's a really good defense, but then we are going to start getting those 2023 vibes. So it was a stay away for me on the side, but I do like the under there. I will start on my side, John. Let's go to Miami, Cleveland. Miami, Cleveland.
Oh
We like getting in
man.
the mud. Yeah, we literally going to be in the mud in this game. Weather is going to be an issue in Cleveland. And I know there's a report floating around like 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. Look, I hope that's the case. I would love nothing more than to see a game with 50-mile-an-hour winds. I feel like we get this a few times every year where it's like there's going to be 7 feet of snow in Buffalo, and then it turns out to be like 4 inches. So I'm not expecting that. But I've canvassed multiple weather websites, and at the very least, we're looking at sustained like 20 to 25 mile per hour winds, 20 to 30, some gusts in there, 100% chance of rain on Sunday afternoon in Cleveland. This already would have been an under for me. And now being able to get this at 40.5, I'm more than happy to jump on that. We've all probably heard the stat by this point that the Cleveland Browns have not scored more than 17 points in 11 straight games, which is just preposterous going back to the final 5 of last season. Obviously, they haven't gone over that number this year. Now, they do have a very gettable defense in Miami. Last in EPA, last in EPA per play, last in success rate, last in EPA per rush, 31st in EPA per pass. Do I really trust the Cleveland Browns, who for some reason threw the ball 52 times last week, to exploit that defense? To some degree, yes, but not to the degree where they're putting up like 30 in this spot. So I think this has all the makings of just a really ugly, like 17-13 type of game. Kicking is going to be an issue for both teams. Passing is going to be an issue for both teams. I don't think Miami's going to be able to move it on that Cleveland defense. So give me the under 40.5 in Miami, Cleveland, and we'll leave a tack on the Browns -2.5 here. Why not? I mean, I think this is Quinshon Judkins like 27 carry type of game.
Yes, this will be coming up in the props section for me for sure. And as you kind of detailed the windy conditions there, I had an image in my head of Tua dropping back and throwing it, and the ball just like literally goes sideways as he's trying to go down.
He's the last quarterback you want throwing in wind and rain, right? Just in terms of like how the ball looks coming off his hand. And Dylan Gabriel might be number 2.
Yeah, I mean, lefty bias aside there, friend. No, yeah, I know you're a lefty. No, I just think that Tua in this type of spot, adverse conditions, is just not kind of where things go well. I'm very nervous for this one. I have an NFFC team that's pretty lively, but I do have to start Tua with Lamar Jackson hurt and on a bye. So I might have to really go dumpster diving and pivot off of that one, because those conditions, boy. Yeah, you're not feeling good about that Dolphins passing game. And yes, I think we're looking at a nice little under here. I think that this number has come down over the course of the day. When I recorded the week preview with Mario earlier, I think this was sitting closer to like 41 or 40.5, and we're seeing a 39.5 at some places.
Yeah, I actually went through on Whalen Next Gen Stats and took a look at those 52 attempts for Dylan Gabriel last week. 29 of them traveled 5 yards or fewer from the line of scrimmage. But not even, usually 10 yards is just like the standard. Like, did it go at least 10 yards? No, 5 yards. We dropped it down. Well over half of those attempts were just doing nothing. So even if Cleveland, for whatever reason, doesn't do the obvious thing and just run Quinshon Judkins 30 times, I don't think we see a lot of explosives on either side here. So under, and give me the Browns -2.5. John, you are going to what I will say is my biggest stay away of the week. We'll get to our stayaways in a little bit, but I'm just going to tell you right now, Dallas, Washington, I have absolutely no idea how this plays out. And it feels like this is the case every week. You are on a side in my biggest stay away. So tell me why the Dallas Cowboys are going to cover this game as a home dog.
Well, Washington, I think that I know that they had that nice win out in LA a couple of weeks ago. They just lost at home, short week here, divisional opponent. I just like the home team in a divisional side that's getting points. In the case of the Cowboys, I do have a little bit of a they owe me after making me look more foolish than usual on this pod last week. I think they were my best bet against the Panthers, and whoops, sorry everybody on that one. You should have known to fade me coming off of a perfect 3-0 week the week prior. But I think ultimately this Dallas offense, especially getting CeeDee Lamb back, testing the depth of those Washington corners, I think Washington's definitely in a danger spot here. And Dallas is just, I'm just not convinced that this Washington offense can keep up in a back and forth type of game. The way that their receiving core is a little bit thin, in my opinion. So yeah, for me, Dallas bounces back here. Dallas has been a tough team to wrangle throughout the course of the season. Like their best game arguably was a tie against the Packers, but at home in this spot, divisional game, I think the Commanders are maybe a little bit overvalued here in this spot. So I think the Cowboys get this done.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is just a total kind of pretzel type of game for me. So many injuries to worry about on both sides. Like Terry McLaurin was limited on Wednesday, then he's not practicing Thursday. I don't think he's going to be out there. Noah Brown's on IR. Do you agree with the total here though? It's in the mid 50s, right? I think I've seen it as high as 55. Like, I think in my official score prediction in my article was like 41-37. Do you think it lives up to that?
That would be fun. I would love that. More the merrier as far as that is concerned. But I think if that's going to be the case, then it's a big Ja'Cory Krosky merit game.
Yep.
I think that we've seen the Cowboys get gashed time and again on the ground, across the course of this season. So assuming that JCM can hang on to the ball and he has a big day and sets up Jaden Daniels in the red zone, that type of thing, we could certainly see Washington answer that way. But that's still, you're still kind of asking a lot. I know that Bill had the big game against the Chargers and everything, and that's a better run defense than what Dallas has, to be clear. But I think ultimately the Cowboys are going to be able to score a ton here, and I think Washington keeps up in the first half, and then there's just going to be a couple instances
Yeah.
there where a drive goes wrong, and clangs off of a reserve receiver's hands type of thing, and there we go. We have Washington falling behind and not being able
Yep.
to catch back up.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I did settle on Dallas. Got to make a pick for every game, and I think getting CeeDee Lamb back for this is huge, and never a great sign if you're Washington bringing in Traylon Burks for a
Ooh.
workout, and I think they might have even brought him onto the practice squad. I mean, that means you're in some desperation zone right now in terms of pass catchers. All right, my next game, John. I am taking us out to Mile High. I am leaning into what we would think would be a very bad spot for the Denver Broncos. They look terrible. They did not deserve to win that game with how they played offensively against the Jets. I think there's a case to be made that that's one of the worst all-around fantasy football games that we've had in recent memory. Two players had double-digit fantasy points in that game, and one of them was like the Broncos fullback. I don't even remember his name, who caught the lone touchdown, and the other,
Atkins.
yeah, Jordan Atkins, maybe something Atkins.
Nate Atkins.
Nate Atkins, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I think. I don't know. Somebody that is not on anybody's fantasy football roster, and then Bo Nix, who had like 12 fantasy points. So Denver looks terrible. New York, of course, coming off of this great home win against Philadelphia. Not only did they win, they dominate the game. They outgained the Eagles. It was convincing as it could be. But there is this idea, John, that a team that doesn't take a bye coming off of the London game, it's a really bad spot. Teams are 13-12 ATS in this spot that Denver is in right now, and they're not playing a direct road game after London, like the Browns did last week. So I know it's not a great spot, but it's not a terrible spot. Sean Payton, 22-8 against the spread in a game after his team scores 15 points or fewer. Really, for me, though, this comes down to the Broncos defense. I don't think the Broncos offense has to play that well. It will be better than it was last week. They have to start running the ball better. I know the Giants front is difficult, but this Broncos defense is playing at a preposterous level. 30 sacks already on the season. We saw them get after Justin Fields last week. I think they'll do the same against Jackson Dart. I don't think he is really going to be able to run on this defense. The Giants have no reliable pass catchers at this point. And, I think you look at a win over Philly and automatically you're just going to say, wow, that's a signature win. What is this Eagles team right now? You started off the show talking about it. Like, what does it mean to beat the Eagles at home? I'm not really sure. So I think this is a nice kind of rebound spot for the Denver offense. I think it's a game where the defense can absolutely dominate the game. And I think the Broncos playing at home here, asking a rookie quarterback, a rookie running back, who are now like the foundational pieces of this team, to go win a game against the best defense in football at Mile High. I'm not buying it. Give me Denver just under a touchdown to cover the 6.5. And this is one, all the money, all the tickets coming in on the New York Giants, making a concerted effort here to do some fading of the public.
I think that's, it's obviously been a really good idea to fade the public this year, of course. I think you kind of, you laid the key point down that I think needs to be reiterated. It's, this Broncos defense was viewed as the best in the NFL coming into the season, and it's been very good so far. Maybe not like quite as insane as many were projecting, but this is the spot where they kind of lay claim to that once again. And I think that the Giants, like, I understand the optimism and the excitement right now. I mean, coming off of that win and then also beating the Chargers, but both of those were at home. Dart looked, in this Giants team generally looked miserable in New Orleans in the sandwich game.
Turned it over on
in
5
between
straight
those.
possessions.
Exactly. So I'm we're gonna have to wait and see if they can take that show on the road, basically. And going on the road to Denver, to Mile High, is really, really tricky against a defense that good. So the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is I hate this Broncos offense so much that if I'm seeing it at more than a touchdown, I'm just kind of staying away from it personally. But I think that there's a spot where we have another kind of disaster game on offense for this Giants team, and the Broncos, even with like 20 points, are able to cover this.
Yeah, if this was 7 or 7.5, it's a no. But the 6.5 is key here on the Denver side. All right, John, your third and final game. This is one that I was ready to fire on. I'm glad we are in agreement on this. I think everybody I've talked to on VSiN, on SXM this week, they hate this pick. They're citing the trends. They're saying this team always plays that team really closely. We're walking into the fire on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Absolutely, we are. My friend Dan Watkins likes to say, trends are your friends until they're not. And obviously, the last couple of years in particular, this Chiefs offense hasn't looked great. They've been able to just kind of like win these games without looking particularly impressive during it. And the against the spread numbers really back that up when it comes to the Chiefs being a heavy favorite. In his career, Patrick Mahomes is 13-24-1 against the spread, is what I'd call a heavy favorite, 7.5 or more. Obviously, you're asking for a good bit more in this spot, 11.5. Here's two things, though. One, I think this Chiefs offense is starting to roll, and it gets Rashee Rice back. And two, with three fingers up, really good stuff there, John. The Raiders are awful. I don't care what happened last week. You were playing the Titans. You did the game that got Callahan fired. Congratulations. This Raiders team can't get out of its own way. It doesn't have its best playmaker, really its only playmaker right now in Brock Bowers. I'm a big Ashton Genty believer, but watching, I don't know why I watched so much of that game last week between the Raiders and Titans. I guess it was the only game that kicked at 4:05 Eastern. So that was sort of like a captive audience, as it were. The Raiders are just, it's painful to watch them try to do anything on offense. It's a lot of slamming their heads into the wall, and Geno is a turnover machine. That's not good going into Arrowhead. So I know the last couple of years, obviously you had that Raiders game where they won on Christmas. And then last year at the peak of the Chiefs voodoo magic, like we're able to escape on Black Friday. Not this time. I think the Chiefs, especially with Rice being back, are going to crush the Raiders. So I'm considering using them in Survivor. I know Mahomes is great straight up as a big favorite like this. So that certainly helps, not to spoil the Survivor. But more than anything, I think it's a little bit overblown, at least for this week, that the Chiefs don't cover these big numbers. I think this is a week where it's an exception to that rule.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with everything you said. Getting Rashee Rice back just matters so much to me. And maybe I'm like the high man on Rashee Rice. I keep getting these notifications in my fantasy apps that are like, get Rashee Rice out of your lineup. There's a player on your bench projected to outscore him. I'm like, I'm just not going to do that. All right. I'm not going to start Brian Thomas over him. I think he's going to have a huge role right away. That's been all the reporting. I buy into it. I don't think the Chiefs are duping us and saying, yeah, we're actually just going to, use this guy as a decoy that we've been waiting to get back for a third of the season. Like, the Chiefs offense is already rolling right now. It already looks as good as it's looked in like a year and a half. And now you're bringing back one of the 10 best receivers, in my opinion, in the National Football League. Like, I think this is Rashee Rice showcase week. And how many games have they played with Kelsey, Rice, and Worthy out there? Like 2.5, and Patrick Mahomes is back to being the MVP favorite. He's the number one quarterback in fantasy. The Chiefs, I would be really surprised if the Chiefs stumble in this spot. I just don't really see a case for the Raiders. And you mentioned such a big thing with Brock Bowers too. It's like, how are the Raiders going score for score with the Chiefs here? Like, I don't think the Chiefs are going to have a disaster offensive game. And if the Chiefs get to 30 points, I don't know how the Ravens are getting to, or the Raiders are getting to 19 or 20. I just don't really see it. Like, this defense is playing at a really high level. I think that win over Detroit, even with the injuries in the Lions secondary, was huge. That was still kind of a game that Kansas City won defensively more than anything else. And, the Raiders, when they've run into respectable competition, like they played the Chargers fairly tough, still lost that game by 11, got absolutely smacked by Washington with a backup quarterback, and then lost to the Colts 40-6. And that they were outscored 40-0 over the second and third quarters of that game. It was 3-3 at the end of the first. So I think the Chiefs are kind of eager to remind everybody that, we are kind of back to being the Super Bowl favorite in the AFC. Nobody has really kind of taken that mantle from us this season. So I could not agree more with you on Kansas City. All right, I got a decision to make here, John. we got like 3 or 4 options here that I'm parsing through. I'm going to go with another double dip here. All right.
Okay.
We're going to look at a total and a side. We're taking the Houston Texans coming off a
Mm.
bye, plus 3.5 at Seattle. This is the ultimate fate of the public because Seattle is the most popular side right now at DraftKings. Over 70% of the bets, over 90% of the money coming in on the Seattle Seahawks. But if you get me that hook with Houston, I will take it. I also like the under 41.5 here. So there's a chance for this to just look extremely bad if the Seahawks come in and put up 30 and win this game by margin. But I think we have a really interesting setup here, which is an excellent Houston pass defense against a Seattle team that has been really reliant on an efficient passing game and really reliant on one guy in particular in Jackson Smith and Jigba, who leads the NFL in team target share. You got Derek Stingley. You got some really nice pieces in that secondary. I think you can limit Jackson Smith and Jigba this week. Make Cooper Kupp, make Torrey Horton, make Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker beat you. I still think this Houston defense is really good. The big thing that kind of hinders me here is the Houston offensive line against the Seattle pass rush, which, like I said earlier, 39 pressures against the Jags last week, just a preposterous number. So that's where this could go awry. But ultimately, I think Houston can keep this close. Texans, Rams, Texans, Bucks, Texans, Jags. These were all one-score games against good teams. 14-9, 20-19, 17-10. I think we get a lower scoring game. I don't think Seattle's going to move the ball on the ground. So I think Houston can make this 20-17. I think Seattle wins it, but I think Houston can keep it within a field goal, and I think we go under.
Yeah, I think that Seattle's going to have a hard time running the ball for I think they want to do that to slow down that pass rush, but once it gets stonewalled enough, you're going to have Darnold in obvious passing situations, and then the pass rush gets after him. That's going to be a problem for Seattle. I'm a little bit slower than the public seems to be on anointing the Seahawks as like a, I don't know if they're calling him like a real contender, but certainly like with upper
Yeah.
echelon of the NFC. I'm not quite there yet. I understand it defensively, and Houston's offense hasn't looked great. They obviously had the huge game against the Ravens, but that was almost like a simulated practice against that defense. But I wonder if that does kind of like knock off some of the cobwebs for them, gives them a little bit of confidence going into that bye, feeling good, and then you get extra time to prepare for it for the Seahawks, who
Yep.
just had to go to Jacksonville last week. So yeah, the hook being the key here, but yeah, the Texans 3.5 is making sense to me too.
We'll talk a little Survivor for the week ahead, and a good time to remind you that we are brought to you by the good folks over at Circa. It's football season. The best place to catch the games is at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. 3 levels, 6 pools, a 143-foot screen. Whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you, from owner suites to cabanas, day beds, stadium booths. There are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. Temperature controlled pools. You could catch the games all year round. It's a great place to watch football any day of the week. Stadium Swim at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book your stay today at circalasvegas.com. So minimal carnage, John, in week 6. Looking at Circa Survivor, only 228 entries ended up going out. So we are a little north of 4,400 surviving to week 7. 54% of the field was on the Green Bay Packers, which was somewhat of a sweat. Not really. Cincinnati ended up covering that game. Never really felt like the Packers were going to blow it. So that was a relatively easy one. 16% of the field was on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and pretty negligible numbers when you look at the rest of the picks. 89 entries went out on Philly, 70 go out on Washington, 48 on Dallas, 9 on Buffalo, 2 on Jacksonville, 1 on New Orleans, 1 on Cincinnati, which, whatever. All right, somebody had Tennessee a couple weeks ago. It worked out. 1 on the Jets, 1 on the Cleveland Browns, and 1 on the Arizona Cardinals. So if you are still alive in Circa Million, implied value of your entry sitting at $4,237. In the Grandissimo contest, this is just a turbocharged version of Circa Survivor, $100,000 per entry. 15 out of 16 remaining entries survive. 13 were on Green Bay, 1 on Indy, 1 on the Rams, and 1 went out on the Philadelphia Eagles.
So for my Survivor pool, they're the one that I take the most seriously, which size-wise is the most similar to the Grandissimo. 10 out of the 12 were on the Packers. They used the Packers last week. I was one of the few sweats in play. I took Indianapolis, and that got really uncomfortable there towards the end. Jacoby Brissett driving them down with a chance to win in a game where Indianapolis hadn't been able to really get a lot of stops. My blood pressure was certainly up during that, but I think we got some good options here. And yeah, I mean, larger overarching point about Carnage last week. I mean, wasn't it like 4,000 entries or maybe even like closer to 2/3 going out after week 5?
Something like that. Yeah, I think the Cardinals put a bunch of people out, and then what was the other
It
massive
was the
the
third.
Rams? The
Everyone
Rams on Thursday night.
yeah, taking it against the shorthanded Niners. That's right.
Yeah, dude. That Colts game, if they call a flag on that Trey McBride play, which I think they could have, I do think it was a correct no call. Could have been defensive holding, certainly, and you would think Arizona would have punched that in. So, good job by you of escaping and still having the Green Bay Packers on your ledger. So if we look at week 7, I mean, all the survivor projections push you towards Kansas City, right? By far the biggest favorite of the week. I think they will be massively used in non-circa contests because, KC plays on Thanksgiving week. They play on Christmas as well. So if you're in the circa survivor contest, you have to think about that. But in non-circa, they're projected to be about 45% used this week. And I get it because there's not really another obvious spot for Kansas City. They'll be favored in plenty of games, but the next time they'll be like a heavy favorite, probably not until I think it's week 16 when they're at Tennessee.
Which, there's looking ahead to next week, and then there's looking ahead to week 16,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's a long time to be, keeping Mahomes and company on ice, waiting to break that glass in case of emergency. So, the pot odds are probably going to tell you that, maybe it's better to find a different option just in the off event. But I think the Raiders are so bad that if you do have the Chiefs and you don't have those separate weeks for Thanksgiving and Christmas, that just go ahead and lock that in, I would say.
Yeah, in the circuit contest, New England is projected to be the highest used team this week. Chicago, Pittsburgh, Denver also in the mix. I don't know if I love any of those. Like this is a third straight true road game for New England. And I think they'll beat the Titans because the Titans are the Titans. But if it was anybody else, I don't know if this is a spot where I would be eager to use the Patriots. Like the track record of teams playing a third straight road game, like they win straight up. It's like 35% of the time, not even cover, like win straight up. So I think that could be a little bit dangerous for New England. I mean, do you trust Chicago against New Orleans? It doesn't sound like it. Would you dare burn Pittsburgh against Joe Flacco on Thursday night?
I would. Oh, with the Steelers being on the road, like that one I feel like is going to be an annoying sweat. I know that this will be posted after, but so this could look really foolish. But I love taking the Steelers as dogs. Really hesitant usually when they're favorites, especially on the road. The Patriots are the one that if I'm going away from the Chiefs are the one that I'm gravitating to. I think the third straight road game detail is certainly interesting, but Vrabel's going to have those guys ready to rock against the Titans. I think I take a little bit of extra solace in that, and the Titans are an abject dumpster fire at the moment too.
I think I'll be going Kansas City across the board, which would be I have 3 entries and they're not in the circuit contest for what it's worth. So this will be the first time all year I think I do three for 3. And I don't, I feel good about Kansas City advancing. I like to differentiate. If I did, I think it would be Denver as that secondary spot. But again, we want to thank the folks at Circa. Highly encourage you to go check out Stadium Swim. Go check out Circa. Again, that pool open 365 days per year. You can go check it out. Book your stay over at circalasvegas.com. Let's get over to the prop market, John. Another solid week for us in terms of the props. Hit a handful of anytime touchdowns. JSN came through for us. Travis Etienne came through for us. I believe my lock prop of the year, however, did not on Hassan Haskins over on the rushing yards. That was just immediately dead. It was so
Your
clear
heart
that
was in the
Connie
right
Vidal,
place.
Yeah, I picked the wrong back. Man. At least we threw in a Vidal anytime touchdown, but my goodness, man, that was brutal. I was so fired up to get Haskins in some fantasy lineups, and now it's looking like that's Vidal's backfield. What are we looking at this week, John? I'll let you lead us off with the props.
Okay, so despite our somewhat pessimism on the Giants, I do like Jackson Dart to go over 212.5 rushing and passing yards. I think he's going to be kind of running for his life a lot in this game. So I think like 40, 50 rushing yards is possible. And then you're really not asking him a ton as a passer. So I think 212.5 rushing and passing at FanDuel is a gettable number for Jackson Dart. I like Spencer Rattler to go over 206.5 passing yards, going up against his boy Caleb Williams, maybe his rival, who knows. Give me I'm gonna nix the Darren Waller one in light of
Okay.
the wind. So that one no longer on the card. Give me Travis Hunter under 40.5 receiving yards. No offense. Give me Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt over 68.5 rushing yards. My hand was guided for a lot of these on our props tool. Very useful. Lets you know like little graphs. I'm a very visual learner. Lets
Oh
you
yeah.
know what the hit rate is on a lot of these, and quick ability to see how often these guys are going over or under those numbers. Really helpful. So check that out. I'm keeping an eye on the Rico Dowdle anytime touchdown. Right now, it's plus
Hmm.
130. I think that could get longer if Chuba is officially in, but it cuts the other way too. If they decide to put Chuba on ice until next week, then that's going to get a whole lot shorter too. So tricky to know what to do, but if you want to jump on it now, it is plus 130. I do like that for Dowdle and the Panthers going up against the Jets. And then lastly, I like to, if I like someone to have a monster game, I'll throw a 2 touchdown game in there this week. That's Quinshon Judkins. Dolphins aren't stopping him.
Yeah, you mentioned it, man. RotoWire.com/picks. You can also download the app version of our picks tool. That is always where we start when it comes to coming up with these props. Just a ton of great tools there. You can compare pretty much every line possible, sports books, all the pick'em apps, all in one spot. So check that out over at RotoWire.com/picks. Some spots where that guided me this week, John. Cortland Sutton, over 54.5 receiving yards. I think this is a criminally low number. Giants have allowed the most yards to wide receivers on the season. Sutton's gone over this number in 4 of 6 games. I think we're getting a big discount after that disaster last week. And again, you have to expect that Broncos offense to play better this week. I'm going opposite of you on Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart to throw a pick against that
Okay.
Denver defense. Minus 118. I think a pretty fair price. So give me that one. Dylan Gabriel, under 32.5 pass attempts, under 196.5 passing yards. We've talked enough about the conditions in that game. Even under normal circumstances, I think this is a high volume rushing game for Cleveland. And, Gabriel could throw it 35 times and still go well under that yardage total. Dak Prescott, over 265.5 passing yards. Washington Commanders, 25th in the NFL in pass yards allowed, 30th in yards per attempt. We'll see if Dallas could get the running game going. Couldn't really do that last week, but either way, I think we see volume from Dak. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, I am with you, John. I like him again this week. I'm taking a look at the receiving yards, however, over 10.5. Now, he's not a high volume receiver, but the Cowboys are giving up 60 receiving yards per game to the running back position. That is obviously among the worst in the NFL, 8.3 yards per target. If he could just catch 2 passes in this game, I think he's going over. Teteroa McMillan, our weekly McMillan prop, longest reception, over 21.5 yards. He has 9 catches already that have gone for 20 plus. Jets have allowed 20 receptions of 20 plus yards. That is the 4th most in the NFL. And then I will join you on Quinshon Judkins, over 91.5 rushing yards. The carries prop is 21.5. Like if he's carrying the ball 22, 23 times, I think we're looking at a 100-yard day against the worst rush defense in the NFL.